Hi everyone, my name is Erin and I go by the pen name Byrnes, and this is my women's fiction or new adult novel, Jenelyn's Journey. This is the first book in the Jenelyn's Journey series, and I have been asked to read you the first chapter. So here we go, bear with me. Chapter 1, May the Beginning. Jenelyn didn't hear the chaotic din of the city, the siren's plaintive wail, or the gang's aggressive shouting outside as she stood staring at her parents in the tiny living room. She could only hear her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. The amber glow of the late afternoon sun filled the windows, creating an orange tunnel of light that softly descended onto the faded blue sofa where her parents sat, looking at her with solemn pride. Her mother's almond-shaped brown eyes brimmed with tears. "It's your time, Jenelyn," she said, her voice quavering. "You're 18. The spirits are ready for you now." Her father laid a heavy, comforting hand on her mother's thin shoulder. Jenelyn didn't miss the twitch of a smile under his thick black beard. "This is part of our way of life," he explained, his deep voice warm and patient. "We don't choose our homes. The spirits do, and we must honor them." Jenelyn nodded apprehensively, understanding the meaning behind her parents' words. She'd been dreading this birthday the most, knowing what it would bring. Her gaze swept over to the large painting that had been hanging above the sofa her whole life. It was an image of a group of Romani gypsies, dressed in traditional attire and playing musical instruments. The colors were vibrant, emulating perfectly the spirit of the flamboyant and jubilant people. Though her family wasn't from Romani heritage, her mother had always loved the painting, her spirit connecting with that freedom. Along with this free way of thinking came a passionate, spiritual belief of higher powers that she called the spirits. This family culture had been the cornerstone of Jenelyn's upbringing. From birth, she'd been raised knowing that at 18 she must fulfill the tradition the women in her family had followed for the past 5 generations. She was surprised by how unprepared she felt. Time had passed too quickly. Her gaze focused briefly on the desk calendar stating the year 2008, before settling on her parents again. The year had seemed so far off while growing up, but now it felt too much in the present. "Must I really leave you forever?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. Her parents gave each other a quick glance, and Jenelyn's stomach tightened. She recognized the look they always gave when trying to prevent her from being frightened. "That isn't a guarantee," her father reassured her. "The spirits may decide that Los Angeles is the best place for you, and you'll be back from your journey soon. If not, you may earn enough money to visit us." Jenelyn snorted under her breath. She could never believe that. Her neighborhood was in a dangerous part of central downtown, a ghetto filled with gangs who fought weekly over turf. She had loathed it her whole life. Surely the spirits understood this, although she knew other parts of the city were nicer. Perhaps the spirits might bring her back to her parents under better circumstances. With this thought, she gathered a little bit of courage and pasted on a brave smile. "When do I leave?" she asked, her heart fluttering with nerves. "In 2 weeks," her mother stated. "Your father and I have already purchased your ticket to Germany. We know a nice couple in Wittlich who are willing to have you stay with them. Their names are Laszlo and Gretchen Venesievers." Her mother rose and walked over to a small corner desk. She picked up an envelope and handed it to Jenelyn. Jenelyn stared at the online printout stating her ticket number, recognizing it for what it was. Her rite of passage to continue a long-standing tradition. She'd known what had to be in the envelope, but it still felt surreal. "My one-way ticket," she said matter-of-factly, but her voice trembled. Her parents nodded, her father still speaking in his gentle, comforting tone. "Yes, you know we provide the means to get there. The spirits lead you the rest of the way. You must be self-sufficient during the journey." Jenelyn gripped her jeans nervously, her hands squeezing the rough material in a panic. She bit her bottom lip and suddenly found it difficult to breathe. She had never lived away from home before. How could she survive all on her own in a strange country? Her mother saw the terror on her face and was quick to encourage her. "I did this too when I was your age. My blood runs through you, and you have the same freedom of spirit that I have. You have the strength and courage to do this. I know you will succeed in finding your true home." "Why did you choose Germany? Is it because you know people there?" Jenelyn asked in a numb voice. Her mother's full lips parted in a crooked grin as she explained. "It's tradition that the first destination is always the country where your maternal great-grandfather was born. A woman I met on my journey kept in touch with me, so it was convenient that we knew someone there. I've never shared with you all the details of the journey tradition. It wasn't time, but now you need to be prepared." She had settled back into the blue sofa and reached out a hand for Jenelyn to hold it and to come sit with her. Jenelyn tried taking a deep breath to still her racing heart. This was her family's tradition. She needed to focus through the nerves and pay attention. Her mother continued. "This tradition started with my great-great-grandmother. Her journey was due to necessity since her family was killed during the Civil War. She was also not a religious woman, but had strong spiritual beliefs. When she became orphaned at 16, the spirits came to her. They told her where to go and continued to lead her until she found my grandfather and settled. She was so grateful to them that she raised her daughter to believe in them and wait for them to guide her life. The tradition has been followed ever since, with each generation successfully finding their true home. The rules of the journey are simple. Always listen for the spirits contacting you. They come in various ways, so you need to be observant. You'll feel them when they appear, just as you'll feel when they leave. Never settle until the spirits let you know it's time." "And there's no way of knowing how long the journey could be?" Jenelyn asked, biting her lip worriedly. "Unfortunately not," her mother said softly. "Just have faith that they're guiding you in the right direction. I would give you some advice, but I think a lot has changed in 30 years. Jenelyn felt a tear escape and slide down her cheek. She didn't trust herself to speak without breaking into sobs. Her pale face and watery eyes, which were full of anguish, didn't escape her parents' notice. They stepped forward to hug her, and she basked in the warmth of their familial love. That night, Jenelyn sat on her single-sized bed and looked outside her small apartment window. Neon lights flashed from the bars outside, and she heard loud voices calling each other, their cries boisterous and angry. Why the spirits had chosen Los Angeles to be her mother's true home bewildered her, but she assumed it had something to do with her father. Her mother had followed her family's way of life from birth, and when her father had married her, he had chosen to practice their ways. They had met at the corner market, so Jenelyn couldn't be too disappointed in the spirit's decision. Her parents adored each other and had raised Jenelyn in a circle of love and support. However, she despised their neighborhood. Her parents were too poor to go on holidays, and she'd never been any further than an hour away from home. She went to her window, straining to see the twinkling stars behind the towering skyscrapers. As much as it scared her, she wanted to leave this neighborhood and travel the world. She wanted to see more sights than a gang fight on the street, or drunken fools wandering past homeless people who had given up all hope that a better life existed. She yearned to see rolling hills and peaceful country towns. She stared at the ticket lying on her bed between her much-loved childhood stuffed elephant and a tattered gold throw pillow with one consuming thought: her journey. Wistfully, she picked up the stuffed elephant, running her finger down the golden tassel on the circus blanket it wore. It was the first stuffed animal her father had bought for her. She had been 3 when they'd gone to see the circus. Despite their meager livelihood, her parents always ensured she had everything she needed, and most importantly, their support and love. Her eyes shifted to the gold throw pillow, a relic of her early teenage years when she had wanted to make her room a little more mature. Even through those rebellious years, when she could have easily turned away from believing in the spirits, her parents had gently guided her in the right direction. Yet throughout all that time, her parents had known they were going to lose her. It pained her to think that perhaps that's why they'd tried so hard to make her upbringing so comforting and secure. She held her stuffed elephant to her chest tightly, fear making her want to cling to her childhood for a moment longer. She desperately asked the stars, "Do I have the wisdom and courage to do this?" She often looked to the stars for guidance, but tonight they twinkled silently back, and she wondered if she could have heard their answer if a car bursting with rap music hadn't been driving by. A soft knock rapped on her door, and she turned to see her mother smiling at her coal black hair tinged with strands of grey. Jenelyn had watched that hair turn from shining black coal dust to a smoky grey tinged with black highlights. It reminded her of how old her mother was, and made Jenelyn think about how many years she had prepared for this. Even then, it wasn't long enough. "I've come to say goodnight and see how you're doing," her mother said, her eyes warm and understanding. Jenelyn shrugged and sat on her bed. Her mother sat next to her, wrapping her arm around Jenelyn's athletic shoulders, molded from years of playing on her school softball team. Feeling her mother's warm arm around her stifled the rising panic in her stomach. "I suppose I'm all right," Jenelyn said, "but I'm scared. I don't know if I'm ready for this." Her mother shook her head, her tone rueful. "I know I wasn't." Jenelyn looked at her in surprise, and her mother nodded. Oh, yes, I was petrified when my mother told me, she admitted. Nothing can prepare you for what's to come, but we can have faith that the spirits will guide us in the right direction. Jenelyn frowned, serious doubt weighing on her as she wondered whether this path was the right choice for her. Do you feel that the spirits chose the right home for you? Her mother listened to the chaos outside and seemed to know what Jenelyn meant. She pondered for a moment, and Jenelyn imagined she was thinking of the unknown possibilities that could have been her life. I agree that I would not have minded a quieter place, she answered, but I can't second-guess them. I met your father, didn't I? And how would I have gotten my little miracle if I hadn't come here? Her mother gave her a tight hug and stroked her hand through Jenelyn's raven black hair. Jenelyn knew her mother was right, but she wished for a better life for her parents. She hated the thought of them growing old here. Or was it the thought for herself that scared her? Although it terrified her to leave her parents, deep in her heart she yearned for a life of her own, and understood that the journey could fulfill an unspoken promise of a happy future. I wish the spirits would guide me to a place with green countryside for as far as the eye can see, she said. It seems a little impossible, doesn't it? Her mother gave her a quizzical glance and then raised her eyebrows, considering the possibility. Not impossible, but I wouldn't be too picky, Jenelyn, she warned. There are so many wonderful sights to see in this world. It may surprise you what you end up loving. The spirits know what is best for us all. Jenelyn knew her mother was right. She had to have faith, but that was easier said than done. Her mother got up from the bed and stretched her long, graceful arms, reaching high. Jenelyn loved her mother's arms. They were a dancer's arms, and back in her day her mother had been able to dance as elegantly as any professional had. Jenelyn wished she had inherited such grace, but unfortunately she had only acquired 2 left feet. It's been a long day, her mother yawned. I'll see you in the morning. Rest easy, Jenelyn. You still have another 2 weeks before you leave. Jenelyn smiled. I know, and I will. Good night, Mama. Sleep well. Good night, baby. Hey, Hottie, why don't you come over here and give me some fries with that shake? Jenelyn glared at the tattooed gangster leaning on the chain-link fence. She was walking around the block to her friend's house, and catcalls always annoyed her. She knew the best thing to do was ignore them, but sometimes it was difficult. Keeping her head high, she walked faster. The voice came again, loud and vulgar. Oh, come on, sugar, don't leave me hanging. Jenelyn couldn't take it anymore. She whirled around, her temper flaring out of her control. Oh, go find a corner and beat it yourself. Instinct told her to run for it, and considering the murderous glare and curses the punk was shooting at her, she knew she couldn't run fast enough. She immediately took off, knowing the gangster would be on her heels. She looked behind her, not surprised to see his dark, hateful eyes and red face seconds behind her. But because of his drunken state, he tripped on the footpath and fell heavily. Jenelyn sprinted around the corner and didn't stop running until she got to her friend's apartment. Her heart was beating fast, and she shook with adrenaline. Idiot! She was furious with herself for satisfying that hoodlum. When would she ever learn to keep her mouth shut? Usually she was able to keep her temper in check, but sometimes she had the uncontrollable urge to snap back. So far she had been lucky, but she knew one day she wouldn't be. Growing up in a rough neighborhood had toughened her too much, and she hated it. Her friend answered the door on her first knock and grinned, though her smile dimmed at the sight of Jenelyn's flushed and flustered face. Hey, Jen, I'm glad to see you made it. Are you okay? Jenelyn's worried face relaxed as she hugged her best friend Nicole, happy to see her familiar red curly hair and jade green eyes. They had been friends since kindergarten, and they were as close as sisters were. It was going to be extremely difficult to tell her about the journey. Sorry I'm late, Jenelyn explained, her heart slowing from a racing gallop. My mom wanted me to go to the store before I came over, and then I got a little sidetracked. She raised her eyebrows pointedly and rolled her eyes. Nicole frowned, well aware that she lived on a gang's turf. Looking solemn, she walked to the phone, fully prepared to ring the police on speed dial. I can call the police and give them a heads up? Jenelyn shook her head, still remembering the creepy look on the hoodlum's face. She knew his vicious, beady eyes intently stalking her would haunt her dreams that night. Fortunately, she had learned long ago to try to shrug off these experiences quickly. No, I just did something stupid. This jerk cat called me, and I snapped at him. I hate my temper sometimes. Nicole chuckled, leading Jenelyn to her bedroom through a tiny kitchen with peeling white linoleum and faded yellow cabinetry. Jenelyn noticed every detail, knowing it was the last time she would ever see it. The kitchen was as familiar to her as her own. A hard knot of sadness caught in her throat at the thought. I know what you mean, Nicole was saying, laughing ruefully. It isn't hard to get you riled up, girl. I do it myself often enough. Jenelyn couldn't help but laugh at the honest statement. Like sisters, she and Nicole had often fought and squabbled over various events. They all seemed so petty and insignificant now. She always took comfort that she could be herself and Nicole would still love her. Telling her the news wasn't going to be easy. Jenelyn gathered her courage and followed her friend into the bedroom. Nicole, I need to tell you something. All right, that doesn't sound good. Nicole stiffened in worry. Jenelyn shook her head and sat on Nicole's bed. She couldn't figure out the best way to tell a best friend, almost a sister, that she may never see her again. She looked around the tiny, cluttered bedroom and years of memories flooded through her. Countless Saturday night sleepovers where she and Nicole would binge on junk food and compete to stay awake the longest. The first time Nicole taught her how to paint her nails, and many afternoons where they helped each other with impossible algebra homework or long reports while gossiping about teachers and mutual friends. She choked back a sob as she spoke. You remember my 18th birthday party last week? It had been a small party with just her parents, Nicole, and Nicole's parents, but it had been full of exuberant celebration, with her father playing his guitar, a table groaning with her favorite food, and the girls chattering nonstop about the enthralling concept of being an adult. Nicole nodded, her worried face lifting with eager excitement as she sat on the bed next to her, crossing her legs comfortably. Worry never sat with Nicole for long, since her upbeat and energetic demeanor always outweighed it. Heck yeah, I do. I can't wait until I turn 18 next month. It's going to be great being able to vote, play the lottery, and gamble at Indian casinos. Jenelyn felt a sharp pain in her heart. She wouldn't even be here for her friend's 18th birthday. Tears formed in her eyes, and Nicole instantly hugged her eyes full of concern. Jen, what's the matter? You're acting like your family is moving or something. Jenelyn shook her head and managed to speak, the words falling through the air like lead weights. No, Nick, but I am. Nicole's face fell as she stammered a response. What? But why? How? You know my family follows a tradition, Nicole, Jenelyn stated, knowing discussing the journey would be tricky. Jenelyn had never liked talking about it, and had only mentioned it in passing to Nicole several years ago when her mother had told her the story. But the girls had been too young to bother discussing it again. Until now. When we turn 18, we have to go on the journey, she continued. I've told you about that before. Nicole nodded and twirled a string from her tattered quilt subconsciously, her thoughts racing. She and Jenelyn never really discussed Jenelyn's family's way of life, so she had to recall faded conversations tucked away in a cobwebbed memory box. I remember. It's when the so-called spirits guide you to your true home, right? So now you have to do that? She asked matter-of-factly, suddenly connecting her faded memory with the news Jenelyn was giving her. Jenelyn nodded and wiped her eyes, her voice muffled in her sleeve. I leave in 2 weeks for Germany. Nicole's eyes widened and she leaped up from the bed angrily. 2 weeks, she yelped. But that's too soon. You're not even going to be here for my birthday. It's not fair. Her eyes became stubborn and challenging, the way Jenelyn knew they would. When Nicole got upset, she turned into a child. Jenelyn tried to explain calmly, knowing she needed to be patient. Nicole, it's not my decision. It's a tradition that I have to follow since it's our belief. Besides, though I'm scared, I look forward to finding a better home than this dirty city. I want you to be happy for me. Nicole's eyes softened, but her mouth was still pouting. Jenelyn knew she struggled between understanding and fighting the loathsome tradition that would take her best friend away from her. After a few moments, Nicole's cheek twitched up into a rueful smile, and Jenelyn could tell that deep down, Nicole knew it wasn't Jenelyn's fault. Jenelyn knew Nicole almost as well as herself, and knew that as long as she was safe, Nicole would learn to be happy for her. Of course, I'm happy for you if you can get out of here, but I'm going to miss you so much, she cried. When will I see you again? Jenelyn looked at her with distress and shook her head. That's the worst part. I don't know if you will. Impenetrable silence filled the room for so long that Jenelyn wondered if Nicole was ever going to answer. She squirmed awkwardly, waiting for her to reply. You may not live here, but you can always visit, right? Nicole finally asked, her voice hollow. Jenelyn shrugged. That depends on how much money I make. My mother never saw her family again. She settled here, and my parents never had the money to go visit her family in New England. Well, what about writing or calling me? I know you don't like being on the internet with MySpace and everything, but you could manage to write a letter or pick up a phone, right? Nicole persisted, refusing to relinquish this one hope of maintaining contact. Jenelyn frowned, her eyes tearing up again at the most painful part. The bond of friendship that she and Nicole had grown over their lives was like a thick rope, strongly woven with laughter, tears, tantrums, and hugs. I'm not really allowed to contact anyone I know, she explained, so softly that she hoped Nicole heard her. Part of the journey is being alone. With those words, she could see in Nicole's eyes that she had cut their rope, leaving nothing but frayed out edges. Nicole erupted, her lips pursed tightly, her cheeks burning crimson, and her bouncy red curls flying as she paced the floor with fury. Her dangerous green eyes glittered when she looked back at Jenelyn. "I can't believe it," she hissed. "I'm supposed to be happy about this? I have only 2 weeks left with you. Forever. How could you do this to me?" Jenelyn shook her head, her eyes pleading as she tried to calm her friend. "I'm not doing this to you. This is about me, not you. It's something that I have to do, whether I like it or not." Jenelyn was surprised at her friend's vehemence. She knew that Nicole would be sad, maybe even depressed, but angry with her? It hurt her to see how little Nicole understood what she wanted. "Don't you see, Nicole?" she continued, desperate to make her understand. "This is my only chance to make a new life for myself. I don't want to be stuck here forever. I'll miss you terribly, but this is a new beginning for me. Honestly, I'm scared beyond belief, but a part of me is excited too." Nicole took a deep, shaky breath and tried to calm down. She sat back down on the bed beside Jenelyn and gathered what patience she owned. Her angry red cheeks softened back to their regular pink blush, and Jenelyn knew that meant her friend's outburst was over. To Jenelyn's relief, Nicole's voice was calm and collected when she next spoke, but her eyes were distant. "I understand, but I hope it's for the best. How are you going to support yourself in Germany?" Jenelyn shook her head and raised her hands helplessly. "I have no idea. I don't even speak German, and I'm sure there are immigration laws about working that I don't even know. It's so daunting and intimidating, I don't know if I can do it." Nicole studied her carefully. Jenelyn could see that Nicole didn't envy her, and for a moment she wished they could trade places. "Trust me, Jen, you'll be fine," Nicole assured her. "You've always been brave and smart. This is just going to put you to the test." Jenelyn grimaced. "That's what I'm afraid of." Nicole hugged her, making Jenelyn's chocolate brown eyes widen with surprise at this sudden show of affection. She was grateful, though, and hugged her back fiercely as Nicole cried into her shoulder. "Oh, Jenelyn doe, I'm going to miss you so much." "Nicole," Jenelyn laughed, her voice muffled in Nicole's red curls. "It isn't like I'm dying. I will do everything I can to come back and visit. Or better yet, you could come and visit me when I settle." Nicole narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "I would, but when are you going to settle?" Jenelyn shrugged, knowing it could take years. "I don't know. I have to keep going until the spirits tell me to stop. I'm going to have to learn how to listen to them carefully." Nicole pursed her lips, her face heavy with resignation. "Well, let me know. Then we'll see what we can do about finally meeting again." 2 weeks later, Jenelyn's father was putting her bag in the boot of a cab outside of their apartment complex. The time had swiftly disappeared between being busy visiting Nicole as much as she could and going on final day trips with her parents. The entire time she felt as if these last moments with her friend and family weren't long enough. Nicole's anger had thawed, though there was a new distance between them that told Jenelyn their friendship had shifted slightly. No longer were they carefree girls bonding over school and childhood. Now they were two young women growing apart in their own lives. But her time with her parents had been the most bittersweet. They had spent their last moments together as a family, visiting places they had enjoyed while she was young, such as having picnics on the beach and dancing to her mother's favorite music at home. These treasured moments had touched her deeply and made her wish she could turn back the clock to spend more time with them. The final day had come now, and Jenelyn and her mother were hugging intensely, neither one wanting to be the first to let go. "You be very careful, Jenelyn," her mother sniffled, 2 streams of tears falling down her cheeks. "I will, Mama," Jenelyn assured her, "but I can't believe you and Papa aren't coming to the airport with me." Her mother sadly shook her head. She grasped Jenelyn's hands tightly as she pulled away from their embrace and studied Jenelyn, seeming to memorize every line on her daughter's face, from her full lips to her milk chocolate eyes. Jenelyn watched her mother's eyes change from seeing her little girl to understanding the young woman she now was, and heard the heartbreak in her mother's voice as she said her final words. "It's for the best, baby," she murmured, a sob choking her voice. "I can't stand goodbyes, especially at airports. Besides, it's good for you to be on your own from the moment you step away from home, and don't forget to watch for Laszlo and Gretchen when you get to Germany. They'll meet you at the airport, and she'll be holding a sign with your name. Be safe, sweetie, and may the spirits protect and guide you well." Her father came up behind Jenelyn and enveloped her in his strong arms, squeezing her tightly. For a brief second, Jenelyn wished he would hold her forever, and she could return to being his little girl who never had to leave his side. "We never say goodbye, Jenelyn," he explained firmly. "It is Lotto Drum. Good journey. I learned that from your mother, and it is a very wise saying." Jenelyn nodded quickly in agreement and tried to keep her tears from spilling. She wanted her parents to believe she was brave and capable so they would feel better about her leaving. Then lots your drum, Mama, Papa, she said valiantly. I love you both, and I hope that the spirits will allow us to meet again. Her parents hugged her one last time, and Jenelyn couldn't keep her tears in check. Finally, she broke away and got into the cab before her parents could see her tear-stained face. Her voice was thick with sorrow, but strong as she gave her orders to the cab driver. Take me to the airport, please. That's it. Thank you for taking the time to read with me. Goodbye.